A lot of people are concerned over Prince Charles because his faith is nowhere near as strong as Queen Elizabeth's was, as far as we know. But the thing I was thinking is, like, we've just gone through reading the Old Testament, right? And where there are so many good kings, so many bad kings, but no matter what happens, God is consistent overall. Welcome to Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and aBible.
Today's day 290, covering Mark 6 and 7. Good accent there, mate.
Cheers. It's kind of one of my favourites, but I kind of forget that I have it in the locker, but then I sort of accidentally stumbled onto it like a week or so ago. I was like, oh yeah, I quite like that one. So been sitting on it.
Yeah, great.
All right, fantastic. So Marky 6. There are a couple of things in here. Such a minor point, first of all. 6 verse 3. They're talking about profit without honor, and they're like asking where he's done this. Isn't this just the bloke from Nazareth? And people took offense to Jesus. It's not just that they didn't like what he was saying, or they didn't believe him, or whatever. They actively took offense to him, and that's kind of puts a bit of a different spin on it, really. So there was that. The main thing I was going to say to begin with is how on Jesus sends out the 12. I love it because here in 6 verse 7, it's saying, then Jesus went around teaching from village to village, calling the 12 to him. He began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over evil spirits. Most people in that verse focus on the authority over evil spirit side of things. I love the fact that he sent them out 2 by 2. Because it just shows the accountability. I think it's so easy, and so frequently we see sort of faith healers and prophets and priests and pastors and stuff go off the rails, and you do wonder where there is, and generally there is good accountability within sort of a church leadership team and stuff like that. But by going out 2 by 2, by being sent out 2 by 2, it just gives that element of accountability for faith, for strength, for energy, for everything. It just makes so much sense.
Right, that's immediately good, and you're absolutely right, man. And I think it helps, strengthen them, as you say, in a way that is so necessary at this time. What's interesting to me as well, again, I've just said I've been reading Acts, but this just came out from that. We always think of Paul, right? But Paul, for a lot of his ministry, was traveling with Barnabas.
Yes.
And then afterwards, Paul was traveling with Timothy. So, like, even Paul, who we sometimes maybe think is like this lone wolf going out and evangelizing everywhere, actually had that accountability and that support. And Christianity isn't a lone walk, right? The whole point is we're supposed to walk obviously with Jesus, but also with other Christians in fellowship. So yeah, that's an awesome point to start with. My point is just the next verse, 6:8. Take nothing for the journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in your belts. So we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's worth repeating. We really need to just trust in God's provision, because God will come through for you 100 out of 100 times, right? And when I'm in, desperate sort of mood or feeling like struggling or whatever, I sometimes cry out to God, and it's amazing how comforted I feel immediately, basically.
Yeah.
It's cool so quickly. And it's really hard to trust anything, right? We live in this broken world, so it's hard to put our trust in even our friends and family, but we can trust in God. We really can, and we should. And that's how Jesus instructed them to go out, right? 2 by 2, but with nothing.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So, that's going to get a that's good and a mamma mia.
Another podcast first. I love that. All right, I think you got the next one, 6:48.
Yeah, honestly, I'm still not quite sure what my point is with this, so just bear with me. Because it's then Jesus walking on the water, and again, I enjoy focusing on the parts of these that other people don't focus on, because it's saying when the evening came and the boat was out in the middle of the lake, he was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. And it seems like if you're not going, and this is why I don't know about it, because I'm chewing it over. Like, yes, you can be wanting to go one way and the wind is against you and you're just stuck, and you're like, well, we got to just strain at the oars to get through this. But was that the way Jesus wanted them to be going?
Right.
Like, so many times we can be straining and pushing and things just aren't falling into place. And why isn't this working? And I think so often, I'm going to say as guys, because are guys, and I think we feel like there's that onus on us in general, sort of like in a marriage and stuff like that, that it's on us to provide. But I think so often we can be pushing and pushing and pushing because we feel like we have to. But actually, are we stopping and taking a breath and taking a minute and saying, Jesus, is this the direction you want me to be going? Am I straining at this because it's just a difficult time where I need to be learning and, you know, strengthening? Or am I straining at this because you're like, wind's blowing that way, mate, just turn around? You know,
that's a really good point. And I think the main thing is, as you say, it's that discernment of whether it's just a tough season and God's going to support you through it, or you're making it tougher on yourself. And if you would just change some things, then it would just be easier, like you say, and maybe more aligned with God as well. So the important thing, right, is that we've got to take it to God. Like, as soon as we feel even the slightest breeze, we should be taking it to God, really. Like, is this definitely what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
You know, within my own life, within the last few years, at least, I can say that, for example, with my business, a few times I've taken it to God and been like, is this still what you want me to do? And then things have come through that suggest that it is. So I'm like, okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if it got to a certain point where I was straining the oars too much, I would have just had to stop, I think, or I'd have just had a really rotten time. That's really cool, dude. Okay, so then Mark 7:7, good old Marky Mark 7:7. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. So Jesus talking about the Pharisees, Sadducees, all that. Just important to remember that Jesus wants relationship, not just rule following, right? Following the commandments, and particularly the golden rule, love your neighbor, love your enemy, is important, and that's a sign of fruit of the Spirit, right? But ultimately, it's much more about relationship than it is about just the rule following and the legalism. So, and I think that's something that we need, as Christians, we need to be very careful of, because it's very easy for us to become like the Pharisees. I mean, like, well, I'm doing this, this, and this, and that they're not, and so I'm a better Christian, and blah, 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 right? And, you know, that ain't it, Chief.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, my next point was literally from the next verse, which is a very similar point, because it's saying you have let go of the commands of God and you are holding on to human traditions. And it was interesting because I was reading this just shortly after Queen Elizabeth had passed away earlier this week, and Melody's like, why do they have to do this? Like, why? Yes, there's so much history steeped through the monarchy and through England and the way this works, but why does it have to be done? At what stage has it sort of been let go of, this is what God says and this is just what we do because we're England? And like, some of these traditions are like 1,000+ years old, of like announcing it from St. James's, the balcony of St. James's Palace, like the Queen is dead, long live the King, that sort of thing, just to spread out by word of mouth and stuff like that. And I guess there's that element of this is our tradition and it's worth sticking to, because if you don't, then it will just disappear.
Right.
But where does it come with this whole, where is God in and within that? And I think there's one thing which I sort of been thinking, a lot of people are concerned over Prince Charles because his faith is nowhere near as strong as Queen Elizabeth's was, as far as we know. I listened to his speech and he mentioned his faith in the Church of England, but at no stage did he really honor and acknowledge God personally within that. But the thing I was thinking is, like, we've just gone through reading the Old Testament, right? And where there are so many good kings, so many bad kings, but no matter what happens, God is consistent overall. And that's what we need to be focusing on and sticking to, as well as praying for our leadership in general.
Absolutely, dude. 100%. Yes. All of that. Yes. And I think what links to this as well, what you're saying, is just when Jesus says, give to Caesar what is Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's, right? Because these traditions, these human traditions, as long as they're not making you go away from God, aren't bad, right? Sure. It's when you get to the point where you're worshipping the rules of the human civilization over God that you're making a big mistake. I just had one very small one. So from Mark 7:33, I just love the detail that Mark goes into as Jesus is healing the man. And like, it's so much more detailed than in the Gospel of Matthew. So just a cool kind of extra layer of imagining it. But yeah, I think that's all we got time for, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, fairly unorthodox, that one, isn't it? Spitting in his eyes and stuff like that, but you know, not recommended. You get in trouble for that sort of stuff. So yeah, beauty. Tomorrow then we've got Marky 8 and 9. Beauty, please pick up your Bibles, get reading, share, subscribe. We love you all. We just hit 50 subscribers, so thank you all for that, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you then.